So hi, Robert. After 5 minutes break, now the second part of the show about web. And we stop with interesting discussion, React Web Components or Angular. And so just to introduce the listeners. So I hated JavaScript. My story was I had to use JavaScript, and basically what I started with is just using some event listeners for visual effects. This was the start, and you had to do it. Otherwise, it was impossible back then without CSS was not a thing. So you had to do everything with JavaScript. And then there was Web 2.0, and my clients were really into Ajax. And I look at that, and then I thought, you are all crazy. Man, the code, I would not even scoping is working there. It was everyone is excited about JavaScript, and for me, it was worse than GWT and RCP combined. So I would rather do GWT inside Eclipse RCP before I touch JavaScript. So this was my personal opinion. So I really liked Swing. So this was the difference between us, Swing and AWT, and I didn't like SWT because the programming, this was like very low level C-like structure. So I didn't like that. So and then what happened is 3 years ago, I got keep asking question for my clients: should we do JSF or not? And JavaFX was dropped by Oracle. So I was okay. This is a little bit problematic for larger companies. There are only smaller companies which care about the support. And then ES6 happened, so 2015, and for me then changed everything because this is for me like Java. So if I look at the code, for me is actually it looks like JavaScript and then there is MDN, Mozilla Developer Network. If you look at that, this is like JCP. So you find everything in one place. It's okay, way to go. So actually now it's time to start with web. And the only thing is there is no template. So there is HyperHTML and LitHTML. And with that, we can build serious applications. So and the last show, you told me you're also using LitHTML and you don't like React because you are more flexible with web components. And this made me curious because I actually like React. I did some projects, I would say 3 years ago, so before the web components were available everywhere. So I did a little bit of React, and I have to say what I'm doing right now without any frameworks. And back then with React was very similar. So my web component code looks almost like React code. So now you told me you spent 1 year with Angular. So was it Angular JS or Angular New? So the 2.0 plus?
The Angular second, the second edition of Angular.
And you already started, and you know the old one, Angular JS?
I made a Hello World, but I didn't know it.
Yeah. So I have to out myself. I really like the old one. So the Angular JS for me, it was understandable. So it was like you did in Hello World, so I have to remember how it worked. So it was like you had a view in the controller, and you can add at the scope some fields, and they were rendered on the view, which made it very similar to JSPs. So for me, JSP was like Angular in browser, something like this. And exactly. And Angular 2, I started with that, and I say you are all crazy. So like it was complete different thing. And what struck me again is everyone loved Angular 2, and I was one of the few who said, okay, so questioned everything. And which make it worse is the dependency injection, modules, exports, imports. It remind me, the old enterprise days. This was, as I saw Angular, I had the same feeling what you got, in the J2E course at the university. I look at that and I say, okay, why I have to use dependency injection in browser? Now, what was your experience with Angular? 1 year with Angular.
1 year with Angular. At the start, I think I'm really naive because if I now recap my ARX session with you, at the beginning, I liked every technology. So the same was with Angular. Mm-hmm. I really liked it, and I really liked the fact of dependency injection. I think, that's all great. And then it changed when it didn't work anymore, because I can't remember how exactly it's done, but you have to initialize the injection point on different levels of the application. I can't remember. And if you did it on the wrong level, it didn't work for a part you were using it. And then it started, I start questioning myself. Do I really need all this stuff? And to be honest, no, because all the application I told you before I have done were really simple. Like normally always master detail. So I have a database, a relational database. I display all the entries. I click on one entry, edit it, save it, delete it. So there is no work that has to be done on the client side. And yeah, also the maintenance work of this Angular application was really hard. If a new developer were joining the team, they had really hard to get used to it. They love that it looks like Java, but the same before with GWT, it's a different behavior. You have a lot of asynchronous calls, and like before, I think that's the hard part of all. The syntax is not that hard to learn. Yeah, maybe for JavaScript with the prototypes, it's like Lisp. At the end, you have to add these brackets. But yeah, so I started hating Angular. Also,
one question. But if the application was that simple, why you spent 1 year with it? So you said you spent 1 year with Angular, but the application was simple.
There were the company was this. They were scanning in Switzerland. You can choose your insurance health company by yourself.
Okay.
They are a big difference every year. Mm-hmm. And what this company was doing, they get the invoices from your doctor. You send them to them, and they scan it, and they analyze it with OCR and different kind of OCR levels, and then send it to the insurance companies with metadata. And we made the integration of the system. Like we have a lot of services, they are independent from each other. The scanner have their own life cycle, and these OCR services have their own life cycle. Then the insurance companies have their own interfaces, and so there are a lot of parts who are not under our control. And so we did between every of these interfaces and services, we did a small service by ourselves, and we do the integration for the system. And the system needed as well a UI. And I think there were at the end, there were 2 or 3 UIs. And this UI were made with Angular. And this was the next point. It was really hard that these 2 independent services, UI services, look similar to each other. It was really hard to extract these components. Angular was always telling about their great modularization, but this was also the time of microservices. Everybody was talking about microservices. And then you have this big Angular application in front of your small microservices, because you couldn't split up your big monolith. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get it there. So it was really hard. We split it up, and we made 2 or 3 complete independent Angular services. But then it was really hard to keep track on the changes of the UI. If I change the button, I have to do it on both sides. Then we created libraries, but you still have to think about updating it on every side. So yeah, it wasn't that fun. I thought when I first heard about this modularization, I thought I could use these components in different microservices, in self-contained services, but it's not. Yeah, the modularization wasn't made for that. So yeah, that was the reason, because I didn't just only implement this Angular application. It was a lot with this integration application as well.
Okay.
The communication bit. Yeah.
And when was it roughly?
17, not that long ago.
And you said you attended my Angular workshop, and then you got the idea to implement with Angular. So was it
I never attended your Angular workshop. No.
Yeah, because the Angular workshop were interesting. So I did some workshops at the airport Munich, and what I did is the first day was web standards, the second day were React, and the last day was Angular. And this was a huge mistake, because there were some attendees who attended all 3 days, and at the last day they couldn't believe. They say, "Are you crazy?" So I was like, "No, this is Angular." It's like, "Why you are showing you this?" Like, because you wanted to see Angular, and then I just canceled the Angular workshops, because it's always the same the same story. As I try install Angular, sometimes the wireless LAN broke, because every attendee had to download 25,000 JavaScript files, and this was only unique experience in Angular. All other workshops work perfectly. There just was a problem with Angular. And at the recent air hacks, there was one guy in the front from Finland. So I told the story. You also attended the air hacks, and someone from the NTD said, "Could you please show us, the code generation, like the ng new component?" And what I did, npm update, I think, and I got the newer version of the generator overnight, and this didn't match the Angular version. So and what happened then is the HTTP communication with the backend didn't work, and the entire Airhacks workshop attendees, we tried to debug the error, and the guy from Finland found the problem that the version doesn't match. But I was okay. I was really sweating. So usually everything worked, and with very trivial code generation, everything broke.
Yeah, but I think that's the big problem of web development. Like the second application I did with React, and there we are using, behind the scenes React is using core.js, I think. Mm-hmm. And now if we are building something, there comes a message from core.js like, please support core.js. We need your help. Mm-hmm. I'm the core developer of core.js and I'm searching for a new job. And I was, okay, if I'm in charge of this project, I would be really scared if I read something like this. So,
yeah.
Like, I'm
this
the alpha.
This is
of
on purpose,
and,
on purpose. This is like,
But I don't get it. If we talk about the backend, you need support from Red Hat, and I remember when Red Hat was bought by IBM, they panic, like, do we still get support for all this stuff? And I was sitting there and was thinking, okay, but you have like JavaScript libraries written by one guy who is searching for a new job, and you don't care. So no problem. But a big company is buying another big company, and you are really scared about your support. So I think that's really crazy. Nobody cares about this. Also, you show the only committer from China from Vue.js.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this, so this is a good example as well. But in our case, there is every build on Jenkins, every build locally, there is this message formatted in really nice colors, saying, I'm searching for a new job. And I'm like, okay, I'm scared. But
so this is not a problem. If the message changes, I'm starving, please help me, then you should, either support the guy or switch the frameworks, I would say.
Yeah, but switch the framework is not that easy, So yeah, but I don't get this two different opposite mindset if you're doing backend and frontend. Nobody cares about dependencies in the frontend. They don't care in the backend as well, but still they try to get support for the backend. But in the frontend, I don't care. One person is building that, so no problem.
Mm-hmm. I was asked recently for an architecture review of frontend, and this was like larger company, and they wanted to rebuild the frontend, and it's partially hardware involved. So they were interested to build something to choose technology which is stable, and it should, I think, for 10 years or something, which is a really long time. It's really hard to predict 10 years in the front end, but the external company suggested Angular, of course, right? And I say, okay, I'm really not sure whether in 5 years Angular is still around. I mean, what happens if Google, and Google Cemetery? This is like the page with dead Google frameworks. So, and I say, okay.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
GWT is there.
Google Cemetery, I think. I will put it to show notes. And
perfect.
And the nice thing is also that Angular comes with 2 releases a year. And I mean, if you have 10 years, there are like 20 releases, and you should actually upgrade also nothing. Also, there is no, new release. And I asked them, what's your strategy? What you will advise? Would you like to upgrade Angular nightly or once a month? Or, and there was actually no answer. I was like, okay, but I mean, the idea is here, to introduce something which is stable for years, and we have at least a strategy how often we should check the updates and upgrade on whatever. And this is interesting. If the deal is to introduce something stable and you introduce a framework, then the next question is how often the framework changes, and very basic questions, and they are ignored. Usually, this is what no one asked that, and this is exactly what I try to just to find the parallels in the real world. If you buy a car with a strange fuel, which is only available, produced by one crazy professor, I would say this is a little bit of risk, because if the prof dies, you can throw away your car, And this would be a major risk, And this is even a problem. I remember electric cars, there were different plugs, and one Japanese and one European. And if you have the Japanese CHAdeMO or whatever, this was a huge story. But, sometimes the software is really expensive and no one seems to care. So this is what's funny, right? Okay, but why you use the core.js? Is this part of React or?
I think it was part of I have to admit I didn't make the setup of React, of this React project. Mm-hmm. There was some other guy. The project started and I said, I don't have an opinion about front-end projects. I just know I don't want Angular. And so he told me,
so you got React. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And he told me React is really cool. It's a lot more lightweight than Angular. And I was, okay, that sounds great. So just start with it. And he was doing all the heavy lifting with the React part. Mm-hmm. But of course, then he left this, he was also a consultant. He left this customer and I had to do again the maintenance work. And I remember one time I had to introduce a new route and I implemented the route and I was like, after 2 hours, I'm finished. But it was blocked and I couldn't find the part where it was blocked. There was a route filter or something like this. I can't remember. And it was hidden somewhere. The place didn't make any sense. And there was filtering for special regex of name for your route. Mm-hmm. And it blocked my new route. And so I was searching for 1 day for this, because I searched for the absolute route names, but mm-hmm. because it was regex, I didn't find it. Mm-hmm. And so I searched 1 day for this filter. So, and then I was again like, oh, okay, I don't like React anymore. Okay. Also,
but React is more reasonable because what React at least is more stable. There are no breaking changes. At least nothing broke in my case. Yeah. So this was a huge improvement. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it's easier to understand, I think, than Angular.
But at the beginning, it looks more strange because you have the mix between JavaScript and HTML. So if you take a look on this, is
JSX.
JSX.
Yeah, JSX. Mm-hmm. Yeah, JSX. Yeah.
But we have something similar. So what you are doing right now, what I understood, you have web components with lit HTML, right?
Exactly. And the huge benefit is I can extract these web components because the customer has a lot of applications who are starting. Mm-hmm. And I can extract them and put it in Nexus and can reuse them. And I have the corporate design. And
question: are you reusing them from directly from Nexus?
We did a proof of work with one component, and mm-hmm. We are doing it in the package JSON. We add the dependency and are using it, but at the moment it's a work of proof, so it's a POC.
So we do something crazier. So what we do is we have so we don't reuse our own components, but what we would like to have sometimes, a set of common components, like let's say Vardin router sometimes, or Vardin table, or lit HTML itself. Yeah. And what we do is, rollup.js is
I use it. I use it by myself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect. And with the rollup.js, I just create an index.js with the entry points, and I'm pointing to whatever I need. And this rollup.js creates for me a single JavaScript file with chunks, so code splitting, which are common. And we put everything in one web server, not into Nexus. So this was my question. And then you can actually just refer to it. So if you are building your app, you can just say, import and URI, and you point to your web server. Cool. Yeah, this is really cool because you can you don't need you don't need anything on your machine. You don't need anything on your machine. And in production, the cool story is if we switch to CDN and the URI is stable, so the browser is able to really well cache the common thing. And what we do with on Jenkins is if one of the dependency changes, is is it worth to upgrade? So we run our build pipeline and you get new version in the URI. So we create our own version, there will be confirm.ch/cdn/01/ and then if the version changes, so we add 0.2 and we can choose to upgrade or not. But the cool story is if the browser sees the URI and is able to cache the entire framework once for all apps.
That's really cool. About caching, it was really funny because you're starting with this. When I started with these web components, of course, every developer was like, "You are crazy. You can't do it without framework, and also the performance is really bad." And I was, "Why?" And he was telling me, "Yeah, you load in every component, you load the same files." And I said, "Yeah, but they are cached." And he, no. He was monitoring also the CPU during initializing of the app, like really watching by hand and watching how the CPU consumption and memory consumption are. It was like crazy.
Okay.
And yeah, because of the caching, it didn't work. So it was always fast. And it was really hard to convince them. Also, they always told me it's not possible and you can't do it. And yeah, it was really hard to convince them to use it, to start using it. And then I went away for like 1 month, and in 1 month, and in one project they changed it from web components to Angular because there was a guy who really liked Angular, and so he changed this project to Angular. Then I go to my customer and said him, yeah, I don't want to participate in this project anymore. And he told me, yeah, it's no problem. We have a lot of other projects, so it's okay. Okay. And this project is still not in production. They are still developing. And it was really funny because they also told me, yeah, you can't do it with standards because it's not working in the old browsers. Mm-hmm. And they changed it to Angular, and they had the review, and they presented the new app with Angular. And the PO tried to open it, and it doesn't open because they didn't compile it to this version of the browser. So before they started with web components, they told me it's impossible because it's not working, mm-hmm. but you still can add polyfills to make it work. Mm-hmm. But with Angular, it didn't work. It didn't even start. But mm-hmm. then it was no problem because Angular is solving all the problems. So yeah, it was really special. This and I don't get this. Why they don't want to try it? Because it's also they tell me there's no routing. I implement routing like with one class. Really simple, like you did with the on hash change. Mm-hmm. They have a look at it and say, but this is boilerplate code. I don't get it, and I have this file with this code. Mm-hmm. And I opened the React application, and there is this file with all the web workers for React. I opened it, and I asked him, can you explain me what all these web workers are doing? And he was, no, but I don't have to because that's React, that's the framework. And I was there, okay, but if I'm writing these services, they have to understand it fully. And if they don't get any line of code, it's not good because it's written by ourselves. But when React is doing it, it's no problem.
I think this is a big difference whether you are working for a company as internal developer or if you are external consultant. Because if you are internal developer and you pick Angular, so no one cares because if you are productive, and you can deliver, so you deliver it. But if you are external and you choose, let's say, Angular or the other framework, and something breaks, they will call you again. Usually it happens to me, and I try to help my clients. But if something breaks inside the framework, so I cannot help them. So this is why I try to avoid GWT, because for me it was what happens if there is a bug in the Java to JavaScript compiler. And I remember there was a project in Switzerland and a larger one. And I say, look, if you really would like to use GWT on your larger project, I would at least ask Google, officially, you're a large company, ask them which browsers are supported or what's the strategy. I mean, they have to have at least an idea. And the cool story was the response back from Google was, there is supported whatever the community supports. There will be never long-term support. And they just say, okay, then we cannot use that, right? And JSF was not a funky technology, but at least I knew I could help them. So what happens on the server was just string concatenation. So if something breaks, we will concatenate the string differently, and we are basically set. So this is the huge difference. Yeah. So for me, it's always the question, what happens if something breaks? Is it actually possible? to understand it and help the clients, or is it mission impossible? So this is what?
No, that's the same I said about the maintenance background of me, because I have a lot of these maintenance projects. If I'm writing new greenfield project, I always think about how easy is this project to maintain? How easy do I find my stuff? And therefore the VCA pattern of view is really great because it's always in the same place. And I see all my views. I also structure my ES6 application, my web components, the same way, like business, and then going deeper. And at the leaves, they are the technical ones. Mm-hmm. So then I think it's really easy to find all this stuff. And a lot of consultants don't have this maintenance background, and they just to make a really generic solution. I was in another project, I think it was with struts, so it was an old one, and they did really, really complex generic solution. Like all the views are extend some other view and extend another view, and if I had to insert a button, I can't go to this view and insert a button, because then the button was inserted somewhere else as well. And I have to split up and do all this hard lifting. And I was, wow, the maintenance is really bad. Why are you doing all this generic stuff? And they told me, but it's really cool now. It's all in one place. You don't have duplicate code. If you split it up, you have duplicate code. But I can open the view, add the button, push it, and I'm finished. Now I have to check everything and look for the end-to-end test if there is a button somewhere I don't know. So yeah, I think that's the maintenance background.
About generic solutions. So in one project was embedded device, and there were problems with the device, and there was Java on it. And they asked me, could you please? I know I had to read the serial number. I forgot why. Whether it is possible for me to write some code which reads the serial number. So of course, I mean, this embedded device, Java, no problem. Yeah. And I just, hook up the debugger into this, and this was like the most generic solution I ever saw. It was like I expected method like get serial number, and this was more like a state machine with lots of command patterns calling. For me, I spent I think 2 days just to call the single method. And there was no method get serial machine or get serial number. It was like crazy. Of course. And I told them, I'm really sorry. The serial number is like, this is now is the method get serial number. And they say, why it took so long to invoke a get serial number method? I was like, because there is no such method. I had to find out how the state machine works inside. And this was a soaped interface with wrong namespaces, or something wrong. I got nulls everywhere, and I say they thought we thought Java now, and it takes two days to invoke a method. It's like sorry, but what can I say? This was the worst experience I ever had at my clients.
That's really. At another customer, I had the problem. They had two applications in parallel, and they are doing really similar things, and they also have similar entities like ABC. And in one project, they had ABC as entities. And in the other project, they had D with a type, which was a number for A, B, and C. And I was doing for the first application, a change. I was finished, and he told me I have to apply it to the other service as well. So I said, yeah, no problem. I think half a day and then I'm finished. I was searching for this entity and for like 2 hours, and then I pick up the phone, and then I called another developer, and I told him, sorry, but can you help me? I didn't find this entity. And then he told me, this we made reverse engineering of the code, and then we found there is a enum and with the type of this entity. So it was really hard. It's really also really hard to make a measurement. How long do you take to fix something? Like exactly. I fixed it in one application, and in the other application is exactly the same, but it took me as long as before because it's totally different of this generic. So it was really funny because you started talking about this generic solution.
Yeah, generic. You said generic. I immediately remember the project, but this was probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But regarding the BCE, boundary control entity, what I do right now in a web project, I apply the same thing to web, and it works perfectly. So boundary are the classes with components, services, so controls are services or just classes with functions, which, let's say you have a button, fetch nails, right, from food. So, and you have to go to the server first.
Put it up.
Then there is a service like, fetch nails. And this in the function, what you do first is you would start a Redux function like, you say Redux dispatch, loading started. Then you go with fetch to the server, and then you said loading completed. And then and what happens then is a reducer function will kick in, and the reducer function I put right now to the entity folder, because it's the data. And this is my basic structure, and it works actually perfectly. So I'm in larger ES6 web components project right now, and it works exactly the same as in backend, and exactly the same structure actually, right? And in backend we have JAX-RS on top level. In frontend, we have the app.js on top level, which loads the first component. And I just wanted to say, for instance, also to communication with the backend right now in my project is the folder called storage or store. So I just wanted to tell you that the BCE also actually works perfectly in the frontend.
Yeah, and you find your stuff really fast. So that's a big benefit. Yeah.
Because, and how your web component looks like. So I assume you have like super component, abstract, confirm component, right?
Yeah, five abstract super.
No, but one is reasonable. No kidding, one is reasonable.
Yeah, I have one where it's making the shadow DOM and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But then no more, just this single one. Also, I have like that. I have my CSS file who is loaded, and I have this loading of the CSS file because it's not directly in the web component itself. So I have this loading of the CSS file, also this structure in the base component, but just one base component.
And what the base component is doing?
It's creating the shadow DOM and rendering the
in constructor. I assume so. In constructor, is something like this root equals attach shadow, right? So something like this.
Yeah, exactly. Shadow open, and then I have a method. Render, where I'm doing the render stuff, and then I have a method get template, which you have to implement in your component, which is used for the render method. And there is also the async call for loading the CSS file. So the render is happening in the callback after it loaded the CSS file.
I have almost the same structure, except this get templates is called view, and I don't have render because the lit HTML is also render. And I do the render in the superclass. So in my airhex component or whatever the name is, I have the method view changed. And what view change does is render this HTML to this root, shadow root. So it renders itself into root. Yeah. And
I have to do it because of the loading of the CSS file.
And what I'm experimenting with, but it works great. I think the experiment is done. What you can do in the constructor, you can say this state equals store get state from Redux. So you can maintain this state from Redux there. And no, I was wrong. I have just this state, which is not the Redux state, and I have one method called extract state. And what you can do, you can specify on which part of the tree you are interested, because Redux is like a singleton with a tree-like structure with lots of slots, and every component can decide in which slot is interested in. And I think what happens right now is I'm observing this. So if you have, let's say, a JavaScript object with let's say client, order, shopping cart, and whatever. This is the objects inside the singleton. So for each slot, you get a folder in the BCE structure with the same name. So it fits fairly well. And so what it means is, I have in shopping folder a shopping, JSON slot in the Redux store, and this is one-to-one match. And the super component says, extract state, and I'm only interested in shopping. And this works so far well. There are always a little exceptions from the rule, but this is the basic structure, and it works as well as in backend. And with that structure, what happens is, that if something changes in the Redux store, the view method is called and the component is re-rendered, and the view method looks like the old React render method. So for me, I would say my code looks almost identical to React.
Yeah, when you talk about the state, I just remembered React. Yeah, so I have to look it up for, like it told me, for my logging problem. Redux will solve it. So yeah, I will look it up and look at your examples. Earlier, you talked about the problematic with the dependencies in frontend. Mm-hmm. And what I have done with my customers is I doing all these vulnerability checks. Mm-hmm. And so it's really hard for the developer to introduce new dependencies, mm-hmm. because I think every NPM library has their vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. And so my pipeline breaks if there is any vulnerability in the NPM file. Mm-hmm. And I do it with audit.js. Mm-hmm. And every commit audit.js is running on package.json as well as package log.json, that mm-hmm. all the recursive dependencies are checked. And so it's really hard for the developer to introduce useless libraries.
So it seems like the most popular guy in the whole team, right?
Yeah, I'm... everybody loves me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because... yeah. Also, yeah, this was really funny because I was the first consultant there in the development space, because they started development like trying DevOps the right way. And so the more consultants are coming to join us, and they started new projects. And one guy started making the backend, and he was doing a lot of backend stuff. It was really useless, like DAOs, DTOs, and all this stuff. And I saw it, and I was laughing really hard. And I said, I delete all your stuff. Mm-hmm. And he took it really personal. And okay. Yeah, I don't think he liked me anymore. Then he gets really angry and told me, why didn't you tell me before? And I told him, like, I was here before. You had the contract of him was doing a new application based on my application. So he just could copy it, but he tried to implement it by himself. And I was telling him this, and he was telling me, yeah, but you are not every day here. But I was every week, at least one day there. And I told him, this code you write it weeks. That's not one day you write all this code. So yeah, not every developer likes me at the project, but it's okay.
It was regarding the DAOs, DTOs, and whatever. So I asked a question at Airhacks TV. This is the show, the monthly YouTube stuff. And I got a response from one of the viewers, and they pointed me to a Red Hat project where they found. And the Red Hat project had exactly the same structure. There was always service, DTO, and whatever. So pointless names just. And they said, yeah, usually what happens, the developers find, a template somewhere, and they just copy it over, and then they start coding. And but this is really, if you think about this, actually there was never a pattern in a book or conferences about that, right? So that you have one folder, and in the folder you have like model, service, DTO, DAO. It is like, unspoken wisdom somewhere in the corner. Yeah. And it just appears. Yeah. And I ask, how you got the structure, and I never got the answer. And then what happens then? You get all DAOs in one folder, all things in one folder. It's like, what, you're doing this? Because it's really hard.
Technically.
Yeah. Why? And they say, why not? Why not? Because it's easier to find. It's like, look, if you have 2,000 DAOs, this is no more easy to find. And we need a Google in a project. I mean, this,
Yeah, also
contradicts.
Also, I always tell them, yeah, and it's I know these projects as well. Like, everything is technical. All DAOs are there, and they always tell me it's easier to find. And I say no, but think about it. The customer is coming and say, I need a view similar to this view. Make this view again. And then you have to search everywhere for the parts you need. If you have the business use case, this view, you copy the folder with your free classes in it, and then you are finished. You have every class you need. But now you have to search everywhere. And there are but it's really hard to find. And no, if you start with a new project, you normally see your front end, you see view ABC, and then if you go to your implementation, you see ABC, and the customer is telling me, make something similar to B. I copy B, adapt it, and I'm finished. So it's really simple. And yeah, I never got this point of this technical structure. And I'm doing a lot of pair programming. And when I watch them pair programming, they always search globally. they never open a folder. They always search globally. They know how the class is named, and they search always globally, never going through the structure. So,
this would explain, because then you say, okay, if you remember the class names, then the folders don't. Okay.
No, they never use the folders. I'm doing a lot of pair programming, and then I saw it. They always search globally. Ctrl-Shift-N in IntelliJ, and then you can search globally for your file.
But what happens? I attended a conference, and prior me there was a Spring guy, and he, I forgot his name, but he introduced a concept called Modular. And I watched that, and the first 15 minutes was almost like BCE structure. So it was completely different. So it was reasonable. So they started, at least, with business names. And then it started to be different. So they had subfolders with impulse and interfaces or whatever. So this point I ignored, but the first 15 minutes were great. It's like, oh, this is actually almost what we are doing in Jakarta or microprofile, and then it. But so it seems like the new structure. Yeah, the new structure could be more reasonable. So hopefully they do a template. But the problem is you cannot do a template, right? You know what? This is the problem. There is no template, because in order to do a template, you need names which are not bound to business. Exactly. And I can always give you a technical template, because hopefully every project has a DAO, DT, or whatever. This is the reason. This is the reason why I get a stupid structure, because you can copy a pointless project, whatever, and you have to because if I would give you a business template, it would be insurance bound. You couldn't use it in automotive project, let's say. This is the reason, actually. It is impossible to create template for BCE structure.
Yeah, you need to know the business. Yeah. That's the point.
Yeah, this is the solution.
But I don't get with this all DAO DTO generation. I was really lazy, though. I don't know all the patterns as well. But even if I look at the files, like I have a DAO, and I look like there is merge, entity manager merge, by criteria, entity manager by criteria. At least then I start thinking about it. Do I really the right thing? Because I'm doing nothing in this class. I just redirect it to entity manager.
Yeah, but this explains everything.
Even if you don't know.
If you have a DAO folder, you have to put some DAOs in it. Otherwise, it is empty,
Yeah, but when you start copying all the things, or the DTOs, you always do all. You always have to copy all the stuff.
Now, what happens then is you see, okay, this is stupid work. Then I add some Lombok to it, so it's a little bit easier.
Or automation.
Exactly.
Code generation.
Back to the front end. So you have your confirm. This was interesting stuff. Yeah. But confirm component. So then inherit from that. You have you said get template and render. And you have set. Are you using custom events?
Yeah, always. I think that's special about these components. Nearly every component has on update or on change. And then you can put a name on this for the custom event name, and then you can listen if this component is changing. So the communication is strictly by events.
Very cool.
And I also implemented because the sending of custom events with the bubbles was too hard for the developers. Mm-hmm. So I implemented a polyfill send, and you can call send with the name and the payload. So then it's really easy for the developers to use it. Yeah.
Okay.
And normally all the components have like on update, on change, and hooks like this, and then you can attach to these events.
Which external component you are using? Using something from Vaadin or SAP?
We are using semantic UI.
Okay.
Because it's hardly based on CSS. So I use the components, and I throw away all the JavaScript stuff, because I think it's based on jQuery. Mm-hmm. And I just use the CSS. And also really nice about semantic UI, you can have the CSS files for every component separately. So if I have my custom button for my customer, I can just use the CSS for the button. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I'm not that great at doing CSS and designing. No. It doesn't look this well, but therefore people are helping me to make it look nice. So, and also what's really nice, even if you have Shadow DOM, you can define primary and secondary color vars, And then you can define primary color and secondary color vars globally, and every web component applies the new color. I started with like an attribute where you can define on every component primary color, but then I recognized I can use even if I have Shadow DOM, the CSS vars inside the Shadow DOM.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know this, so it was per accident when I missed it. So I deleted all the pass-through of the colors, and now I can change every web component, even if it's Shadow DOM and separately, with primary and secondary color. Yeah.
What I am also experimenting with is in the BC structure. If I need a CSS specific file for a component, I put it to on the component package level. So if I have component package shopping and there is boundary control entity, you can put in the root the CSS file. And then you can actually load this CSS file with import and import URL and specify and this is where you get the locality. So if I'm working on a element shopping cart, so I have shopping cart CSS, so there's everything in one place, but I can decide whether I will load this CSS into a shadow root or on a global level. So I can do import on shadow root or global level. Both is working.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
And the CSS properties, I'm also working with it, but they are a global level right now on body or asterisk level. So I define all the properties. And what's also cool, you can set the vars, the properties, with JavaScript. So it's also possible to modify the properties via JavaScript via an API. So I have to say the whole web standard thing is really is really cool in the sense of it won't disappear in a few weeks or will be changed, and it's really powerful. And you're learning this for life. So you don't, have to relearn this thing after, some Angular developer change mind over weekends, or it cannot happen. So a few developers have to change mind over weekend because there are 3 or 4 major committers. And so this is what I like. So this is really powerful, and you can find things out. And in worst case, you can still do Angular, React, or Vue, but you will understand, the foundation way better because they will have to use the same stuff. So it's impossible in browser to be different, except you are rendering everything to canvas, right?
Yeah, and I can use my web components in Angular and React as well.
Yeah.
I never tried it, but I read about it, and so
we
when I was presenting this.
So we tried. We had to do this
I can say.
several times because a migration project, right? So I get lots of requests to migrating away from Angular right now. And you cannot just throw away Angular code. So what usually we're doing is the app shell remains as it is, and the new stuff is built with web components, and calling from Angular to web components not a problem. And calling back, it depends what you would like to achieve. So there's several hacks we can do, but this works actually flawlessly. Okay. No problem.
Ah, perfect.
And with React it's a little bit harder, but it also works. So it's no problem at all. But deleting, replacing Angular with web components works great, and is actually fun.
Great, because the reason is my customer asked me or tell me I presented him the solution, and of course he talked with the other consultant and developer as well, and they told him, this crazy guy Rob, he's doing all this native stuff, and I don't get it, and it's really hard. And so I could tell the customer, but it's no problem. If you still have your Angular and React projects, you can reuse these web components in your project as well. So, you don't, So it's really cool.
Yeah.
So then he was, okay, let's do it. And, no more problems.
Yeah, and there's also Angular elements, which where Angular creates web components. So this is also possible. But this you can...
Yeah, I read about it.
Mm-hmm. And even we, in one Angular JS project, we introduced web components. And back then, if you look at Angular JS code, so at the end of the day, what you can always do, you can specify global variables, and communicate via the variables. It's a hack, but this is a temporary hack until Angular completely disappears. So you can always find something in the browser. Yeah. No problem. And by the way, about craziness.
Yeah.
In one project, so I explained, no frameworks and just web standards, and everyone was excited. Like, we're doing this. And then they presented me the solution, and they say, we are even better than you. It's like, why? It's like, yeah, because we didn't use web components. We implemented everything by ourselves. It's like, what? And I take a look, and they just use JavaScript classes, and they created everything from scratch. And it's like, probably you went too far. I mean, it's like web components is just in browser, just use them. And they no, we don't need web components. It's hard to understand. We have our own components. Like, okay, this is. Don't tell anyone. This was my idea. This was.
Just apply the pattern of not using any dependencies.
Yeah.
Oh, I think web components are dependencies.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I get rid of it. So I'm even more lean. But
yeah. But this is
just
but
applying
it was
the pattern.
still understandable, but no more productive. So they were notice. That was the problem. So and what? Yeah. And they use directly this in a text and they say, okay, this is not nice. Okay, thank you.
You can do this, but why? Yeah.
So we have to go.
Thank you.
So where people can find you again? So just go over confirm.ch, right?
Confirm ch. And we are doing a redesign of the application, so of the website. So, but there is still the website, and also on Twitter, Brehm Robert.
There is no confirm ch on Twitter.
No, I think there is. Yeah, of course there is on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, there is confirm ch on Twitter. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
So then, see you next year.
Yeah. See you next year.
Bye.
Goodbye.